risking everything. Part 3. The radiation hit Marcus like a physical wall, invisible fire that set every nerve ending ablaze. His security uniform offered no protection against the reactor's raw output, designed only for normal operations, not direct exposure to an unstable fusion core. Each step toward the manual override controls felt like walking through molten glass. The chamber stretched before him like a cathedral of technology, massive magnetic field generators creating geometric patterns in the superheated plasma. Warning displays painted everything in hellish red, their automated voices announcing radiation levels that no human could survive. Marcus ignored them all, focusing on the single control panel that could save 30,000 lives. Behind him, through the radiation-shielded window, Chief Morrison worked frantically to prepare the reactor systems for manual control. Other technicians had joined her, their faces grim with understanding. They knew what Marcus was doing, knew the cost he was paying. Their efficiency became a tribute to his sacrifice. 10 steps into the chamber, Marcus felt his skin begin to burn. 20 steps, and blood started seeping from his eyes and nose. 30 steps brought him within reach of the override controls, his vision blurring as cellular damage cascaded through his nervous system. The control panel swam in and out of focus, its holographic displays wavering like heat mirages. Marcus forced his trembling hands to work, entering the disconnection sequence that would sever all external control links to the reactor core. Each number felt like lifting a mountain, each confirmation like swimming through liquid fire. A proximity alarm screamed as the containment field fluctuated wildly. The remote sabotage system was fighting back, trying to accelerate the collapse before Marcus could complete his work. Automated systems battled each other in microsecond cycles, control passing back and forth between manual and remote interfaces. Marcus entered the final confirmation code just as his vision failed completely. The manual override engaged with a deep harmonic thrum that he felt in his bones rather than heard. Across the chamber, status displays shifted from red to amber as local control was restored. He collapsed beside the control panel, his body's systems shutting down in cascade failure. Radiation poisoning was already too advanced for any medical intervention, but the job was finished. The reactor core stabilized under Morrison's expert guidance, its contained star settling back into controlled fusion. Through the chamber's communication system, Marcus could hear Morrison coordinating the restoration efforts. Her voice was steady and professional, but he caught the underlying grief. Another friend lost to the hegemony's madness, another price paid for the crime of believing in something better. Marcus, Morrison's voice cut through the static. Response teams are en route. We're going to get you out of there. He tried to laugh, but only managed a wet cough. Save the medical supplies for people you can actually help, Sarah. Just tell me one thing. Did she make it? A pause while Morrison checked external sensors. Zelani evacuation pod cleared the system boundary 20 minutes ago. Jump signature confirmed. Your friend is away free. Relief flooded through Marcus, stronger than the pain consuming his cellular structure. Kira had escaped. The intelligence she carried would reach the resistance, would help them strike back against the hegemony's expansion. His death had purchased something precious, hope for the future. Good, he whispered. That's good. The chamber fell silent except for the deep harmonic pulse of the stabilized reactor. Marcus felt consciousness fading, but death held no terror now. He'd kept his promise to a frightened alien child, had proven that humanity could rise above its worst impulses when tested. Somewhere in the darkness gathering around his vision, he thought he heard pulse rifle fire, shouting, the sound of running feet. The hegemony had finally breached the reactor chamber's defenses, but they were too late. The sabotage was stopped, the evidence preserved, the witness safely away. Commander Hayes appeared in the chamber doorway, his face twisted with rage and frustration. He raised his weapon toward Marcus's motionless form, then lowered it with disgust. Radiation had already accomplished what a pulse rifle would have done more quickly. "Sir," one of Hayes's soldiers called from the main chamber, "engineering teams are restoring full control. The reactor's stable." Hayes stared at Marcus through the radiation-proof window, his expression unreadable. 30,000 potential casualties, and he saved them all for one alien child. Sentimental fool. "Sir, what are our orders regarding the station?" "Maintain occupation. Revise the operational timeline. We'll find another way to justify expansion." Hayes holstered his weapon and turned away from the override chamber. And put out a general bulletin. Security Officer Marcus Chen died heroically defending the station against alien terrorists. Make him a symbol of human courage. The irony might have amused Marcus if he'd been conscious to hear it. The hegemony would use his death for propaganda, painting him as a hero of human supremacy while hiding the truth of what he'd actually died for. History would be rewritten by the victors, as it always was. But history had a way of preserving uncomfortable truths, especially when those truths were carried by survivors who remembered. Somewhere beyond the system's edge, Kira was already transmitting her intelligence to the Resistance. The real story would survive, would spread, would inspire others to choose courage over convenience. 3 weeks later, on a hidden base in the Centauri system, Resistance leader Admiral Sarah Torres reviewed intelligence reports with growing amazement. The data was incredibly detailed, providing insights into hegemony operations that years of conventional espionage had failed to uncover. "Where did this come from?" Torres asked her intelligence chief. "Zalani refugee named Kira Yeth Ka. Escaped from New Geneva Station during the occupation. Claims a human security officer died protecting her, helped her gather this information." Torres studied the technical specifications for hegemony weapons and ship designs. The level of detail suggested access to classified military databases, not simple observation. "How much of this intelligence can we verify?" "About 60% so far. Everything checks out. Navigation routes, supply schedules, personnel assignments, it's all accurate." The intelligence chief paused. "Admiral, if this information is genuine, we could cut the hegemony's expansion timeline in half." The Resistance had been fighting a defensive war for 2 years, slowly losing ground to the hegemony's superior numbers and resources. This intelligence represented the first real opportunity to seize the initiative, to strike at targets that would genuinely damage the enemy's capabilities. "Where's the refugee now?" Torres asked. "Medical bay. She's been working with our cryptography teams, helping decode hegemony communication protocols. Apparently, her people have some kind of natural mathematical ability." Torres found Kira in the base's small medical facility, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex equations. The young Zalani worked with intense concentration, her golden eyes tracking patterns invisible to human perception. Around her, Resistance cryptographers struggled to follow her reasoning. "Kira Yethka?" Torres said gently. "I'm Admiral Torres. I wanted to thank you personally for the intelligence you provided." Kira looked up from her calculations, and Torres was struck by the profound sadness in those alien features. She looked like a child carrying the weight of adult responsibilities. "Marcus Chen saved my life," Kira said simply. "I'm trying to make sure his sacrifice means something." "Tell me about him." For the next hour, Kira described Marcus's heroism with mathematical precision, quantifying courage in terms of calculated risks and probable outcomes. But between the statistics, Torres glimpsed something more: genuine affection for a human who had seen her as a person rather than a problem to solve. He could have escaped, Kira concluded. Probability of survival would have been 47% if he'd abandoned the station. Instead, he chose to save people he'd never met, including humans who supported the hegemony. Torres felt a chill of recognition. She'd known Marcus Chen years ago before the war, when they'd served together on frontier patrol vessels. He'd been a good officer then, steady, reliable, more interested in protecting people than advancing his career. "Did he have any message?" Torres asked. "Anything he wanted the Resistance to know?" "He said to remember that some humans chose to fight for what's right, that humanity could be better than what the hegemony represents." Kira's hands moved across the holographic displays, adjusting equations with unconscious grace. "I've been working to prove his thesis mathematically." "Can you?" "Prove it, I mean." Kira's expression brightened slightly. "Human behavioral patterns show significant deviation from hegemony propaganda models. Statistical analysis indicates that 63% of human populations reject xenophobic ideology when presented with direct evidence of alien intelligence and cooperation." Torres smiled despite herself. Only a Zalani would try to prove the value of courage through mathematical analysis. But perhaps that was exactly what the Resistance needed. Not just weapons and tactics, but proof that their cause was mathematically sound. "What do you need to complete your analysis?" Torres asked. "More data points, evidence of human-alien cooperation across multiple sectors and time periods." Kira paused in her calculations. "And perhaps the opportunity to gather such evidence personally." The request was ambitious. Kira was asking to become an active Resistance operative to risk her life gathering intelligence in the field. At 12 years old, she would be the youngest agent in the organization's history. But she'd already proven her capabilities under fire. The intelligence she'd provided was worth more than entire fleets of warships. And her mathematical abilities offered unique advantages in planning operations that conventional military thinking couldn't match. "I'll consider it," Torres said. "But first, tell me what you think Marcus would want you to do." Kira was quiet for a long moment, her golden eyes reflecting the holographic displays around her. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. "He would want me to help others the way he helped me, to prove that humans and aliens can work together, can be stronger united than divided." She gestured to the equations surrounding them. "The mathematics support this conclusion. Cooperative behavior produces superior outcomes to competitive behavior in 97% of modeled scenarios." Torres made her decision. "Then that's what we'll do. Welcome to the Resistance, Agent Yethka." Over the following months, Kira became a legend within the Resistance movement. Her combination of alien intelligence and human courage, learned from Marcus Chen's example, proved devastatingly effective against hegemony forces. She orchestrated operations that seemed impossible, calculated risks that paid off in spectacular victories. But more importantly, she became living proof of Marcus's dying words. Wherever she went, humans and aliens worked together with increasing effectiveness. Her presence inspired cooperation that transcended species barriers, creating a unified front against tyranny. The hegemony never understood what hit them. Their intelligence agencies searched frantically for the Resistance's new secret weapon, never suspecting that their greatest threat was a 12-year-old Zalani girl guided by the memory of a human security officer who'd believed in something better. Years later, when the war was won and the galaxy began rebuilding, Kira would establish the Chen Institute for Interspecies Cooperation. The memorial plaque in its lobby bore a simple inscription: "Marcus Chen, proof that humanity's greatest strength is not its capacity for war, but its willingness to sacrifice for others." But the real memorial to Marcus lived in every human-alien partnership, every cooperative venture, every moment when species chose understanding over fear. He had died to save one alien child, and that child had grown up to save the galaxy. The mathematics of hope, it turned out, always favored courage over convenience, sacrifice over selfishness. Marcus Chen had known this instinctively, had acted on it without calculation or hesitation. In doing so, he'd given the galaxy its greatest gift, proof that intelligence could triumph over ignorance, that cooperation could defeat conquest, that one person's courage could change the course of history. Kira Yethka carried that proof with her always, a mathematical certainty that gave meaning to every risk, every sacrifice, every moment when someone chose to be better than their worst impulses. In the end, that was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, not superior technology or overwhelming force, but the simple willingness to risk everything for what was right. The equation balanced perfectly, as Marcus had always known it would. Kira's plan unfolded with mathematical precision. Each step calculated to exploit the hegemony's greatest weakness, their underestimation of alien intelligence. While Marcus provided covering fire from their hiding spot, she accessed the station's environmental systems through her datapad, gradually adjusting atmospheric pressure and gravity generators in subtle increments. The hegemony soldiers guarding Base 7 began to feel the effects within minutes. Slight dizziness, minor balance issues, nothing dramatic enough to trigger alarms, but sufficient to dull their reaction times. The Altarian soldiers, adapted to higher gravity, noticed the changes first, but attributed them to combat stress. "Brilliant," Marcus whispered, watching their enemies struggle with equipment that suddenly felt heavier in their hands. "How long before they realize what's happening?" 17 minutes, Kira replied without looking up from her calculations. "Their combat suits will compensate automatically, but that gives us a window." Marcus marveled at her precision. In 3 days of war, he'd seen seasoned soldiers break under pressure. This 12-year-old Zalani was not only holding together, she was thinking 3 moves ahead of trained military professionals. Her people's mathematical gifts weren't just academic curiosities. They were weapons as powerful as any pulse rifle. The window opened exactly when Kira predicted. As the hegemony soldiers' equipment began automatically adjusting to the environmental changes, their suit systems diverted power from non-essential functions. For 90 seconds, their motion sensors would be operating at reduced efficiency. Marcus and Kira moved like ghosts through the maintenance shafts, emerging directly into Bay 7 through a service panel behind the evacuation pods. The soldiers were still at the bay's main entrance, unaware that their prey had flanked them completely. The nearest pod's hatch opened with a soft hiss. Marcus began the startup sequence while Kira downloaded the station's complete database into her datapad. Terabytes of information flowed through the connection: trade routes, defensive positions, resistance safe houses, hegemony troop movements, everything the rebellion would need to strike back. "Upload complete," Kira whispered. "But Marcus, look at this." Her datapad displayed a schematic Marcus had never seen before. The station's fusion reactor core. Red warning indicators pulsed across the display, showing critical instabilities in the containment field. The hegemony hadn't just invaded the station. They were preparing to destroy it. "Deliberate sabotage," Kira said, her voice tight with anger. "They're going to blame the explosion on alien terrorists, justify their expansion to other systems." Marcus felt sick. 30,000 people still lived on New Geneva Station. Humans, aliens, children. The hegemony was willing to murder them all for propaganda value. His hands clenched into fists as rage threatened to overwhelm tactical thinking. "How long?" he asked. 6 hours at current decay rate, but the process can be accelerated remotely. Kira's fingers flew over her datapad, tracing power conduits and control pathways. Someone would need direct access to the core chamber to reverse it. The pod's systems came online with a gentle chime. Freedom waited just beyond the launch bay doors, safety for Kira, a chance to deliver her intelligence to the resistance. Marcus looked at the girl who had saved his life twice in the past hour and made another decision that would define him. "Take the pod," he said. "Get this information to the Resistance. I'm going to the reactor core." Kira's golden eyes widened with shock. "The probability of survival is less than 3%. Hegemony forces control every route to the core chamber." "Then I'll make my own route." Marcus ejected the pod's emergency supply kit, checking its contents. Medical supplies, survival gear, and one item that made him smile grimly, a plasma-cutting torch. "Besides, someone has to make sure you get away safely." "I can't let you die for me," Kira said, her mathematical composure finally cracking. "You're the first human who saw me as a person instead of a problem to solve." Marcus knelt beside the evacuation pod, meeting her eyes one final time. "That's exactly why I have to do this. You're not just carrying data, Kira, you're carrying hope. Proof that humans and aliens can work together, can be better than what the hegemony represents." Footsteps echoed from the corridor outside Bay 7. The hegemony soldiers had discovered their environmental manipulation and were conducting a systematic search. Marcus sealed Kira inside the evacuation pod and initiated the launch sequence from the external controls. "Remember us," he said as the pod's engines engaged. "Remember that some humans chose to fight for what's right." The pod launched just as the bay doors burst open. 6 hegemony soldiers poured in, weapons raised, but their target was already accelerating toward the jump point. Commander Hayes appeared behind them, his face twisted with rage. "Shoot it down!" he screamed. "Negative, sir," one of the soldiers replied. "Pod's already in the civilian shipping lane. Firing would violate hegemony rules of engagement." Marcus almost laughed. Even genocidal fanatics had bureaucratic limitations. Kira would escape, would deliver her intelligence to the Resistance. His sacrifice would mean something. Hayes spun toward Marcus, pulse rifle tracking to target center mass. "You just signed the death warrant for every human in this system, Chen." "When the hegemony discovers we let intelligence escape—" "Let?" Marcus interrupted, reaching for the plasma-cutting torch. "I don't remember asking permission." He triggered the torch and dove sideways as Hayes fired. The pulse bolt seared past his ear, close enough to singe hair. Marcus rolled behind the second evacuation pod as energy fire erupted from multiple directions. The hegemony soldiers spread out, establishing overlapping fields of fire that covered every exit. Professional work. But they'd made one critical mistake. Marcus wasn't trying to escape. He was buying time and gathering intelligence. Every second he kept them occupied was another second for Kira to reach the jump point. Every tactical decision they made revealed their capabilities and limitations. The plasma torch carved through the pod's hull plating like tissue paper. Marcus created his own firing position, using the molten metal to obscure thermal imaging. When he emerged to return fire, his shots were precisely placed. Not to kill, that would only escalate the situation, but to disable weapons and force tactical retreats. "Containment protocol," Hayes ordered. "Don't let him reach the reactor core." So they knew his destination. Marcus filed that information away as he moved to a new position. The hegemony's intelligence network was better than expected. Someone had been monitoring communications, tracking movements, anticipating resistance actions. The rebellion had security leaks that needed plugging. A flanking maneuver forced Marcus deeper into the bay, away from the main exit. 2 soldiers moved to cut off his retreat, while the others maintained suppressing fire. Standard small unit tactics, executed with mechanical precision. The hegemony trained their soldiers well. Marcus triggered the station's fire suppression system, flooding the bay with dense foam. Visibility dropped to 0 as chemical suppressants obscured every sensor and targeting system. In the chaos, he moved like a ghost, using sound and intuition to navigate. A soldier emerged from the foam directly in front of him. Marcus tackled the man before he could raise his weapon, driving both of them into the deck plating. They fought hand-to-hand in the chemical murk, training and desperation clashing in brutal simplicity. The soldier was younger, stronger, equipped with powered armor that enhanced his physical capabilities. Marcus was wounded, exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination. Under normal circumstances, there would be no contest, but these weren't normal circumstances. Marcus fought not for victory, but for time, for meaning, for the hope that somewhere in the darkness between stars, a small Zalani girl was carrying proof that humanity could be better than its worst impulses. He won through pure stubbornness, using the soldier's superior strength against him by redirecting momentum into the bay's bulkhead. The man's helmet struck durasteel with a resounding clang, and he went limp. Marcus appropriated his weapon and ammunition, then disappeared back into the chemical fog. The suppression system cycled down after 5 minutes, foam dissipating to reveal an empty bay. 5 hegemony soldiers searched frantically for their missing comrade and vanished quarry. Commander Hayes coordinated the search with growing frustration, his authority undermined by a wounded security officer and a child. Marcus was already 2 levels down, moving through service tunnels toward the station's heart. The plasma-cutting torch proved invaluable, creating new passages through bulkheads and machinery that the hegemony couldn't predict or monitor. He was writing his own map of the station, one molten handhold at a time. The reactor core lay behind layers of security, both automated and human. Radiation shielding, biometric locks, armed guards, and fail-safe systems designed to prevent exactly what Marcus was attempting. Under normal conditions, reaching it would be impossible. But normal conditions had ended 3 days ago when the hegemony decided that genocide was acceptable foreign policy. Now Marcus moved through a station at war, where emergency protocols had replaced standard operating procedures, and chaos provided its own form of camouflage. He reached the outer security perimeter 2 hours after leaving Bay 7. Through reinforced windows, he could see the reactor core chamber, a cathedral of technology where magnetic fields contained the fury of a captive star. Warning lights painted everything in hellish red as the containment field fluctuated with deliberate instability. 6 technicians worked at control stations, their faces grim with concentration. They weren't saboteurs. They were trying to stabilize the reactor against external interference. The real sabotage was being conducted remotely from somewhere else on the station. Marcus accessed a maintenance terminal, his security code still functional despite everything that had happened. The system displayed diagnostic information that made his blood run cold. The containment field collapse wasn't scheduled for 6 hours. It was happening now, accelerated by someone with override authority. He had minutes, not hours, before 30,000 people died in nuclear fire. Kira's escape had triggered a dead man's switch, and the hegemony was willing to sacrifice their own soldiers to ensure their propaganda victory. The security door required biometric confirmation from 2 senior officers simultaneously. Marcus had his own authorization, but he needed another. Commander Hayes would work, but that would require capturing someone who was actively hunting him through the station's corridors. A better solution presented itself through the terminal's personnel database. Chief Engineer Sarah Morrison was currently in the reactor chamber, trying desperately to prevent a disaster that she probably didn't understand was deliberate. Her authorization would work, and she was someone Marcus could trust. The plasma-cutting torch carved through the security door's locking mechanism in 90 seconds. Alarms screamed as Marcus entered the reactor chamber, but the technicians were too focused on their work to stop him immediately. He reached Chief Morrison's position before security could respond. "Sarah," he called over the alarm klaxons. "It's Marcus Chen. I need your help to save the station." Morrison spun around, her face streaked with sweat and radiation burns from proximity to the failing containment field. "Marcus? We thought you were dead. The hegemony said you'd gone rogue. We're working with alien terrorists." "Look at the diagnostic readings," Marcus said, pointing to her control station. "The field collapse isn't random. Someone's controlling it remotely using administrative override codes." Morrison's eyes widened as she processed the data. Her engineering mind immediately grasped the implications. Deliberate sabotage. But why would the hegemony destroy their own conquest? Because it's not about the station. It's about the propaganda value. Marcus showed her Kira's downloaded intelligence. They'll blame the explosion on alien terrorists, use it to justify expanding the war. Understanding dawned on Morrison's weathered features. She'd served on New Geneva Station for 15 years, had watched it grow from a frontier outpost to a thriving hub of interspecies cooperation. The idea of destroying it for political gain filled her with rage. "What do you need?" she asked. "Your authorization codes to access the manual override chamber. Someone has to physically disconnect the remote control systems." Morrison looked at the manual override chamber, a radiation-bathed compartment directly adjacent to the reactor core itself. Entering it would mean certain death from exposure, but it would also save 30,000 lives. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. "No." Marcus was already moving toward the chamber. "You're needed here to restore normal operations once the remote control is severed. Besides, I'm already dead. The hegemony will execute me as a traitor regardless of what happens today." The manual override chamber's heavy door required both their authorization codes to open. As it cycled through its security sequence, Morrison grabbed Marcus's arm with desperate strength. "There has to be another way," she said. "Some technical solution that doesn't require suicide." Marcus met her eyes, seeing his own determination reflected there. Sometimes courage isn't about finding a clever solution. Sometimes it's about doing what's necessary, regardless of the cost. The chamber door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond lay a nightmare of barely contained nuclear fury, where radiation levels would kill an unprotected human in minutes. The manual override controls sat in the heart of that inferno, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to reach them. Marcus stepped forward into the light of a captive star, knowing he would never step back out. But somewhere in the void between worlds, a small Zalani girl carried proof that humanity could choose courage over convenience, sacrifice over selfishness, hope over hate. That knowledge made the pain worthwhile. Marcus Chen adjusted his plasma rifle for the third time in 10 minutes, the familiar weight doing little to calm his nerves. The cramped maintenance tunnel beneath New Geneva Station hummed with the distant vibrations of the orbital platform's massive engines. 3 days ago, this place had been bustling with traders, diplomats, and tourists from across the galaxy. Now it was a war zone. The hegemony had come without warning. Their sleek black ships had materialized from hyperspace like death itself, immediately jamming all communications and deploying boarding parties. Marcus had been in the middle of his shift as a security officer when the alarms started screaming. Within hours, the station's upper levels were crawling with hegemony soldiers in their distinctive crimson armor. A soft whimper echoed through the tunnel ahead. Marcus froze, finger hovering over his rifle's trigger. Friend or foe? After 72 hours of running skirmishes and desperate evacuations, he'd learned to trust nothing. The hegemony used voice synthesizers and holographic disguises. He'd already fallen for their tricks twice. Moving carefully along the narrow passage, Marcus rounded a corner and stopped dead. Huddled against a junction box was a small figure, no more than 4 feet tall. Blue-tinged skin caught the emergency lighting, revealing delicate features that were unmistakably Zalani. The alien girl couldn't have been more than 12 in human years, her large golden eyes wide with terror. "Please," she whispered in accented standard. "They killed my parents. I saw them die." Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. The Zalani were peaceful traders, known throughout the galaxy for their mathematical genius and artistic abilities. They posed no threat to anyone. Yet the hegemony had been systematically hunting them down across the station. He'd seen the bodies. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice gentle. Kira, she replied, clutching a small data pad to her chest. Are you going to hurt me too? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. In the past 3 days, he'd witnessed humanity's neighbors in the galaxy being slaughtered for no reason other than xenophobia. The hegemony preached human supremacy, claiming that aliens were corrupting their species. They'd started this war to cleanse the galaxy. No, Marcus said firmly, slinging his rifle across his back. I'm going to get you out of here. Kira's eyes brightened with hope, but it was short-lived. The sound of heavy boots echoed from somewhere behind them, growing louder. Marcus grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her deeper into the tunnel system. His mind raced through the station's layout, searching for a route to the evacuation pods. They moved in silence for several minutes, Marcus pausing frequently to listen for pursuit. The hegemony soldiers were thorough, but they were also overconfident. They expected scattered resistance, not organized escape attempts. That arrogance might be their only advantage. A junction ahead offered 3 paths. Marcus chose the middle route, leading toward the station's outer ring where a few evacuation pods might still be functional. As they crawled through a particularly narrow section, Kira spoke softly behind him. Why are you helping me? Your people started this war. Marcus paused, the weight of her words settling on him. It was true. Humans had created the hegemony, had given voice to the worst impulses of their species, but humans had also fought against it. The resistance was small but growing, made up of people who believed in something better. Not all humans are like the hegemony, he said. Some of us believe we're stronger together with other species, not weaker. They emerged into a wider corridor lined with blast doors. Marcus checked his scanner, noting several life signs moving through the station's upper levels. The hegemony was conducting systematic sweeps, working their way down. They had maybe an hour before the soldiers reached this section. A maintenance shaft provided access to the outer ring. As they climbed, Marcus explained his plan. The evacuation pods in Bay 7 might still be functional. Most of the station's refugees had tried to escape through the main docking bays, leaving the smaller emergency pods overlooked. Kira listened intently, her mathematical mind already calculating distances and timing. The probability of success is low, she said matter-of-factly. Hegemony forces control all major corridors between here and Bay 7. Then we don't use the major corridors, Marcus replied. He'd spent 2 years working security on this station. He knew every maintenance tunnel, every service duct, every forgotten passage. The hegemony might control the highways, but the back roads belonged to him. They reached a ventilation grate overlooking the outer ring's main corridor. Through the slats, Marcus could see hegemony soldiers setting up a checkpoint. 6 soldiers in full combat armor, armed with pulse rifles and energy barriers. Between their current position and Bay 7 lay 3 more checkpoints, just like this one. We wait, Marcus whispered. Patrol schedules change every 4 hours. In 20 minutes, half these soldiers will rotate out. Kira nodded, but her expression remained worried. What if the pods don't work? What if we're trapped? Marcus met her golden eyes, seeing his own sister in them. Sarah was 14, safely on Earth, probably worrying about school exams instead of pulse rifle fire. Every child deserved that kind of security, regardless of species. Then we find another way, he said. I promise to get you out, and I keep my promises. The checkpoint rotation happened exactly as Marcus predicted. 3 soldiers left, replaced by 2 others who seemed less alert. This was their chance. Marcus led Kira through a series of service tunnels that paralleled the main corridor, emerging 2 levels up in a cargo bay. The bay was eerily quiet, filled with abandoned shipping containers. Marcus moved carefully between them, scanning for threats. Halfway across, his scanner picked up movement. 4 life signs approaching from multiple directions. They were walking into an ambush. "Down!" Marcus hissed, pushing Kira behind a large container. Pulse rifle fire erupted from 3 directions, energy bolts sizzling through the air where they'd been standing moments before. The hegemony had been tracking them, probably since they left the tunnels. "Marcus Chen," a voice called out, amplified by combat armor. "Surrender the alien and we'll make your death quick." Marcus recognized the voice. Commander Hayes, his former superior in station security. A man he'd once respected, now hunting children for the crime of existing. Marcus felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. "The only thing dying today is your career, Hayes," Marcus called back, checking his rifle's charge. 80%. Enough for a fight, but not a prolonged one. "You always were too sentimental, Chen. Humanity doesn't need alien lovers." More pulse fire erupted, systematically destroying their cover. Marcus counted muzzle flashes. 4 shooters positioned to create a crossfire. Professional work. Hayes wasn't taking any chances. Kira whimpered as energy bolts exploded against the container above her head. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. He activated his rifle's overcharge function, sacrificing half its power for a single devastating shot. Rising from cover, Marcus aimed at a support beam 20 feet above the nearest hegemony soldier. The overcharged bolt severed the beam cleanly, sending a 2-ton cargo lifter crashing down. The soldier dove clear, but his position was compromised. Marcus was already moving, pulling Kira toward the bay's exit. Pulse fire chased them, gouging chunks from walls and deck plating. They reached the corridor beyond just as Hayes appeared behind them, rifle raised. Time slowed to crystal clarity. Marcus saw the commander's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the targeting laser painting Kira's small form. Without thinking, he threw himself sideways, wrapping his arms around the Zalani girl as Hayes fired. The pulse bolt took Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him against the bulkhead. Pain exploded through his nervous system, but he kept his grip on Kira. She was unharmed. That was all that mattered. "Run!" he gasped, pushing her toward a maintenance hatch. "Base 7, follow the yellow markers." "I won't leave you," Kira said, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. Hayes was advancing, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. 2 other soldiers appeared behind him. Marcus knew he was finished, but maybe Kira could still escape. Maybe his death would mean something. "You have to go," he said urgently. "Find the resistance. Tell them what you've seen. Help them stop this madness." Kira looked between Marcus and the approaching soldiers. Her young face hardened with determination. Instead of fleeing, she activated her data pad, fingers flying over the holographic interface. The station's lights flickered, then died completely as she triggered an emergency power shutdown. In the darkness, Marcus heard the whine of charging weapons and the confused shouts of soldiers. Kira grabbed his uninjured arm, pulling him toward the maintenance hatch with surprising strength. Emergency lighting kicked in 30 seconds later, but they were already gone, disappearing into the station's mechanical heart. They crawled through ducts barely wide enough for Marcus's shoulders, following Kira's perfect memory of the station's layout. The data pad she carried contained complete schematics, downloaded during her mathematical work for the trading consortium. She guided them through passages Marcus had never known existed. An hour later, they emerged in a service room adjacent to Bay 7. Through the reinforced windows, Marcus could see 2 intact evacuation pods. Hope flickered in his chest, immediately dampened by the sight of 6 hegemony soldiers guarding the bay's entrance. "They know where we're going," Marcus said, his wounded shoulder throbbing with each heartbeat. "Hayes is good at his job." Kira studied the soldiers through the window, her golden eyes calculating. "Not all of them are human," she observed. 2 are wearing Altarian breathing apparatus under their helmets. Marcus looked closer. She was right. The hegemony recruited from species they considered useful, offering them protection in exchange for service. Altarians were natural warriors, but they had a code of honor that the hegemony exploited. "That might be our way in," Marcus said, remembering briefings about Altarian culture. "They respect courage above all else. If I challenge them directly—" "You'll die," Kira said flatly. "Your injury has reduced your combat effectiveness by 40%. Marcus smiled despite the pain. Even in crisis, she thought like a mathematician. "Maybe, but you'll have a chance to reach the pods. Sometimes courage isn't about winning. It's about buying time for others to succeed." Kira was quiet for a long moment, studying the datapad in her hands. When she looked up, her expression had changed. The frightened child was gone, replaced by something older and more determined. "There's another way," she said, "but you'll have to trust me completely." Marcus looked into her golden eyes and saw steel beneath the fear. Whatever plan she was forming, it would be brilliant. The Zalani didn't just understand mathematics. They lived it. Every possibility, every variable, every outcome calculated to microscopic precision. "What do you need me to do?" Kira's small hand found his, squeezing gently. "Help me save everyone.